A new report came out talking about how deadly is the diet that we eat. The question is, what impact does this have on us now and for our kids and future generations? And it's something that needs to be addressed immediately. Obviously, a lot on this channel, you guys know we talk about obesity, diabetes, and ways and nutritional strategies to overcome them. Today, we're going to be talking about something that's very relevant and very important in terms of both food availability and some of the strategies and tips we can do to both improve that and improve the quality of nutrition for ourselves. So first and foremost, one of the things that came out is that right now we have about 900 deaths per day. So I'm going to ask you, do you think those 900 deaths per day come from smoking, or do you think they come from diet-related causes? Immediately, most people would think smoking, right? Because obviously we know smoking is not good for our health, and several people die every single day from lung cancer or smoking-related diseases. However, currently in today's society, we are facing 900 deaths from diet-related diseases alone, and 50% of these are from cardiovascular disease, which is a major issue that needs to be addressed. So the White House is calling a conference on September 28th to discuss 5 pillars that need to be addressed. And they haven't done this in decades. The last time they did this was kind of the introduction of food stamps, which was very important to increase food availability for people who could not afford food otherwise. But they figured, you know what, we're facing another crisis. People are dying due to the food that we're giving them, so we need to address it. So the first thing they're going to address is how do we improve food access and affordability? And one of the things I'll talk about in our pillars later is it's not just about giving people more food. We need to be focused on the quality of the food that we're giving them. Because if you're handing out soda and chips, it actually may be doing more harm than good. And so that's number one. Number two is how do we integrate nutrition and health into our society? How do we make this a more prevalent message? How do we help educate more people on the importance of nutrition and its impact on health? The third is how do we empower consumers to make and have access to healthy choices in the workplace, in schools, right? How do we make sure that there's better access to better foods? The next is how do we support physical activity for all, right? We're seeing a huge revolution in fitness where a lot less people are going to the gym, yet there's more access than ever to work out from home, right? You have Peloton, you have a tonal. Even if you don't have one of those devices, you have the mirror. If you don't have any of those devices, now there are apps. Apple just launched a brand new watch that has integrated Apple Health or Apple Plus that will have specific workouts that you can follow from at home. And so how do we make this more accessible to people and allow more outdoor spaces or places to have areas that people can work out and still stay fit? And the last one is how do we enhance nutrition and food security research? Obviously, there's a lot of research to be done in multiple different areas. It's an area that we're extremely passionate about being researchers ourselves, but how do we focus on the impact that nutrition and exercise plays, and how do we research that to find out the best interventions for the masses, right? So NPR put together this list of 7 different items that I hope get addressed at the September 28th meeting because I think they're very important and allow a lot of value to be derived from them in terms of what we should be doing for our society. So first is we need to treat food as medicine. The reality is food is medicine. It's either feeding disease or helping you fight disease. And that's something that we often forget about. We think about pharmaceutical drugs, we think about supplements in their terms of how they affect diseases. But the reality is one of the most impactful things that we could do in terms of disease is look at what our food is doing. We know that highly processed carbohydrates, high consumptions of sugar, for example, have been shown to feed cancer. We know that cancer thrives off of sugar.
So these are things that we need to take into account. We know that a lot of vegetable oils that are used are highly inflammatory. We need to do a lot more research to look at what effects do these vegetable oils that we've been recommending for a long time as a government, what impact do they have long term? Because they're super inflammatory, and what are some other alternatives that we might want to be recommending instead? The second thing is the quality of our calories over quantity. I think decades ago we were looking at, with food scarcity, we just need to get food and calories into people's hands. Now, where 70% of our population is either overweight or obese, we've come to realize maybe it's not just feed them any type of calories. We need to be more aware of what type of calories we are feeding them. So instead of offering sodas and chips and a bunch of bread and carbohydrates that are super high in sugar, processed carbohydrates, and ultimately calories, maybe we need to focus more on the quality of the nutrition, making sure they're getting in ample amounts of good quality proteins in addition to calories, but not just focusing on tons of sugar and carbohydrates and things that are cheap in order to just get them nutrition. The third thing is we need to increase dietary and lifestyle coaching. One of the biggest challenges we faced over the last decade is this rise of social media. Now on social media, anyone can be a guru or expert. And while a lot of people get benefits from hearing new information, some people it causes more confusion than anything else. And the problem is you have so many mixed messages. Oh, just calories in, calories out. If it fits your macros, you have to eat a ketogenic diet. There's so many different viewpoints that ultimately people are confused. And so we need to make sure we're hiring the right dietary and lifestyle coaches to make sure they're delivering the best information possible. The fourth thing is we need to support food entrepreneurs. And this is one that I'm super passionate about because I know a lot of food entrepreneurs, especially in the low carb or keto space. A lot of them will actually reach out to me and be like, hey, I want to send you free stuff. I'm like, I appreciate that. I actually want to buy it from you because I want to support their business, because what they're doing, as long as they're producing good quality foods or snacks, I want to support that because we need more of it. For example, there's a friend of mine, Vasa, who has this soda that's called Perfy. And it's a lower sugar soda that is absolutely incredible tasting, yet has significantly less sugar than your Coca-Colas, your Dr. Peppers, your Sprites. This should be encouraged more so because one of the main sources of added sugars in our diet, the number one is sodas. And so we need to find and support entrepreneurs who are tackling these big problems and support them to try and help get some of these things more mainstream. Number 5 is we need to increase the amount of farmers who are growing healthy foods. We don't need a lot more grains. We need to support people who are harvesting fruits and vegetables and also meat. I think that's very important to mention because a lot of this gets controversial and people will argue about the impact of meat. And I know I've had many videos discussing the downsides of a potential vegan or vegetarian lifestyle. That being said, we need to foster people who are raising animals and having meat the right way, right? A lot of these farmers and a lot of these people who are doing this get a bad rap, but the reality is there's some good eggs amongst that, no pun intended. But a lot of these pastures will do things the right way, and we need to support them more. Number 6 is we should make school meals free. This is an interesting one. So there's research reports that are coming out about either kids who are too embarrassed to ask for meals, and 2, or parents who aren't filling out the paperwork or aren't filling it out correctly, so the kids aren't getting that meal. And for some kids, unfortunately, that school meal is probably the biggest meal that they're going to get throughout the day. And so we need to figure out a better way with school systems that if kids are going to be in school for 8 hours a day, that lunch meal is a very, very important meal. We need to make sure we're supporting initiatives to help make sure that not only can kids afford it, but the quality of that meal is very important. And I'll give you an example. When I went to school, when I was in middle school, it was around the time that they started making the announcement that pizza sauce was considered a vegetable since it came from tomatoes. This is a major problem, a huge problem. We shouldn't be considering pizza and being like, oh, well, it has all the major food groups because it has tomato sauce. Technically, that comes from a vegetable, so it's good to go. We need to be a lot better than what we are. And if you look around the globe, compared to other countries, the US school lunches are terrible compared to what other countries offer, and we need to step up our game. And the last one is, it says we need to establish a food czar. We need to have a group or an entity that we can trust. And it's very difficult to do because, like I said earlier, there's so many different opinions on what's right, what's wrong. But that's why I think there needs to be kind of this committee of different minds, people who are going to see things different, but ultimately come out with a better conclusion for the masses and for our country than they would on their own. Right now, we spend about $150 billion a year on nutrition and exercise programs. And the sad part is we're at a point right now where obesity and diabetes are at its worst that it's ever been. And so we're spending a ton of money on these initiatives and they are failing. And we need to improve them. And we need to improve them by hiring the right people. I'll volunteer myself as being a food czar on this committee. But you need to have a strong committee that comes together, that brings new ideas, that looks at the research, that figures out practical ways that we can implement these things to the masses in order to effectively have change. So that being said, I would love to know your guys' thoughts on these 7 pillars or anything else that you hear about or want to point out of why our diet currently is very deadly and some of the things that you might want to hear about during this September 28th meeting, because it's a very important meeting. Typically, it happens every couple of decades. And so it's one that's very important and very time sensitive due to the nature of our country and how metabolically sick we are. So let me know down in the comments. Make sure you share this with friends or family members who might need to hear some of these tips for themselves or for their loved ones. Until next time, I'll talk to you soon.